Hi everyone, happy Friday or whenever you decide to watch this. But today is Friday for me and I am ready for some more Wayside School. Are you ready for some more Wayside School? Chapter 22, The Three Erics. In Mrs. Jewell's class, there were three children named Eric. Eric Fry, Eric Bacon, and Eric Ovens. They were known throughout the school as being fat. Eric Fry sat at this end of the room, Eric Bacon sat in the middle of the room, and Eric Ovens sat at that end of the room. There was a joke around Wayside School that if all three Erics were ever at the same end of the room at the same time, the whole school would tip over. Eric Bacon hated jokes like that. That's not surprising. After all, he wasn't even fat. In fact, he was the skinniest kid in Mrs. Jewell's class. But nobody seemed to notice. The other two Erics were fat, and so everyone just thought all Erics were fat. "But I'm not fat," Eric Bacon insisted. "What's your name?" asked Jason. "Eric," said Eric Bacon. "Then you're fat," Jason concluded. And pretty soon, skinny little Eric Bacon, the skinniest kid in Mrs. Jewell's class, had the nickname Fatso. Eric Fry really was fat. He was also the best athlete in Mrs. Jewell's class. His body was solid muscle. However, nobody ever noticed. The other two Erics weren't very good at sports. Eric Ovens was clumsy. Eric Fatso Bacon was a good athlete for his size, but because he was so skinny, he didn't have much power. So naturally, everybody just assumed that Eric Fry was also clumsy and weak. After all, his name was Eric. Whenever the other kids chose up teams, Eric Fry was the last one picked. They never noticed his home runs or the fabulous catches he made. Like all great athletes, he made the impossible look easy. Of course, the other kids did notice the one time he dropped the ball. Eric Fry was playing right field. Terrence belted a deep fly to left. Eric Fry raced all the way across the field after the ball and at the last second dived at it. He caught it in midair on his fingertips, but as he hit the ground, the ball squirted loose. "Well, what do you expect from Butterfingers?" said Stephen. And since that time, Eric Fry had the nickname Butterfingers. Eric Ovens was the nicest person in Mrs. Jewell's class. He treated everyone equally and always had a kind word to say. But because his name was Eric, everyone thought he was mean. Fatso was mean because everyone called him Fatso. Butterfingers was mean because he always had to play right field. So naturally, everyone just assumed that Eric Ovens was also mean. They called him Crabapple. "Good morning, Alison," said Eric Ovens. "How are you?" "Lay off, Crabapple, will ya?" answered Alison. "If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all." All three of the Erics had nicknames. It was better that way. Otherwise, when someone said, "Hey, Eric," no one knew to whom he was talking. One time all the Erics would answer, the next time none of them would answer. But when someone said, "Hey, Crabapple," then Eric Ovens knew they were talking to him. And if someone said, "Hey, Butterfingers," Eric Fry knew they meant him. And when someone said, "Hey, Fatso," Eric Bacon knew that he was being called. Chapter 23, Alison. Alison had pretty blonde hair and always wore a sky blue windbreaker. Her windbreaker was the same color as her eyes. She was best friends with Rondi. Rondi had blonde hair too, but she was missing her two front teeth. Alison had all of her teeth. Alison used to say that she knocked Rondi's teeth out. Alison was very pretty, so all the boys in Mrs. Jewell's class teased her, especially Jason. But Alison said, "Leave me alone or I'll knock your teeth out like I did Rondi's." The boys didn't bother her much after that. One day, Alison brought a tangerine for lunch. She took the peel off in one piece. Miss Mush, the lunch teacher, walked up to her. "Alison, may I have your tangerine?" she asked. Miss Mush always gave food to the children, so Alison was happy to give the tangerine to Miss Mush. Miss Mush shoved it in her mouth and swallowed it in less than 4 seconds. Alison left the lunchroom and walked down to the library. The lunchroom was on the 15th story. The library was on the 7th. Alison already had her book. She just went to the library because it was nice and quiet there. The librarian walked up to Alison. "What are you reading?" she asked. Alison told her the name of the book. "That sounds like a good book," said the librarian. "I never read that one. May I borrow it?" The librarian always lent books to the children. Alison was glad to be able to return the favor. She gave the librarian the book. then walked down the stairs outside to the playground. All of Allison's friends were playing freeze tag. Allison didn't feel like playing. She reached into the pocket of her sky blue windbreaker and took out a tennis ball. She bounced it a couple of times on the ground. Lewis came up to her. "Hi, Allison," he said. "May I play with your tennis ball?" Lewis always gave balls to the children. Allison happily gave her ball to Lewis. Lewis threw the ball all the way to the other side of the playground. Then he went chasing after it. Allison didn't feel like doing anything. Jason ran up and tagged her. "You're frozen," he said. "Get out of here before I knock your teeth out," said Allison. Jason shrugged his shoulders and left. Allison went back inside and up the 30 flights of stairs to Mrs. Jewell's room. The lunch period wasn't over yet, but Allison didn't feel like doing anything else. She had given her food to the lunch teacher, her book to the librarian, and her ball to the yard teacher. She went inside her classroom. Mrs. Jewell's was there. "Oh, Allison, I'm glad you're here," said Mrs. Jewell's. "I'm having trouble with an arithmetic problem. Maybe you can help." "Sure," said Allison. Mrs. Jewell's always helped the children with their problems. Allison was happy to help. "How do you spell chair?" asked Mrs. Jewell's. "C-H-A-I-R, said Allison. "Yes, that's right," said Mrs. Jewell's. "I knew it wasn't C-H-A-R-E, but I couldn't remember what it was." "That's not an arithmetic problem," said Allison. "That's spelling." "Yep, you're right again," said Mrs. Jewell's. "I always get the two mixed up." The bell rang. The lunch period was over. Allison could hear the other children running up the stairs. "Allison," said Mrs. Jewell's, "you learned a very important secret today, and I don't want you to tell any of the other children, not even Rondi." "What was that?" asked Allison. She didn't even know she had learned a secret. She loved secrets. "You learned that children are really smarter than their teachers," said Mrs. Jewell's. "Oh, that's no secret," said Allison. "Everybody knows that." And that's all we're going to read today. Thanks for joining me, guys. I miss you, and I hope you have a great weekend, and I will see you next time. Okay? See ya!